There's something happening right now that you can't see. Behind every moment, behind every decision. Behind every breath you take, a structure is forming. Invisible, precise, mathematical. Yet alive, it's the secret architecture of thought, and whether you realize it or not, you're building it every second of your life. Most people believe thought is private, that it lives and dies inside the mind. But that's not true. Thoughts are not silent. They echo, they vibrate. They shape the invisible field that becomes your reality. Every idea, every belief, every hidden emotion is a line drawn on the blueprint of the universe and the world you see around you. Is that blueprint made visible? Pause for a moment. Look around you wherever you are. Every object, every building, every human creation once existed only as a thought. Someone imagined it first. Someone dreamed it, felt it, believed it into form. That's the power we forget we have. We are architects, not just of cities or machines, but of existence itself. Yet most of us build unconsciously. Our mental blueprints are tangled with fear, distraction, and repetition. So the reality that forms around us feels chaotic, random, unfair. But what if it isn't? What if the world is not happening to you, but through you? I remember the first time I began to understand this. It wasn't during some grand revelation. It was quiet, almost ordinary. I was sitting alone late one night, staring at a glass of water. It sounds trivial, but stay with me. I had been struggling for months, trapped in patterns that felt endless, the same mistakes, the same emotions, the same invisible walls closing in no matter how I tried to escape. And as I stared at the still surface of the water, something occurred to me. Every ripple begins with a single point of contact. Every movement, every wave, every shift begins in one place. And I realized that the chaos outside me was nothing but the reflection of the ripples within me. That my outer world was mirroring my inner one. It was as if the universe whispered, "You are the cause pretending to be the effect." That moment changed everything. Because once you glimpse the architecture of thought, you can't unsee it. You begin to notice the patterns, how fear creates constriction, how gratitude expands opportunity, how every emotion has geometry. You start to feel the invisible structure of reality, the silent conversation between your mind and the universe, and slowly, you realize your thoughts don't just observe the world, they build it. There's an ancient principle hidden in plain sight. The outer is a projection of the inner. The visible is the shadow of the invisible. Thought is the blueprint of reality. You can't escape this law. You can only learn to work with it. Because every thought carries frequency, and frequency attracts form. That's how the architecture begins. Not with action, but with awareness. We live inside a web of cause and effect, so intricate that we often mistake our own creations for coincidence. You think of someone, and they call. You expect rejection, and it finds you. You believe you'll fail, and your choices subtly align to make it true. That's the architecture responding silently. Flawlessly without judgment, the universe doesn't care what you think. It just builds according to the design you give it. For years, I didn't want to believe this. It was easier to blame the world than to see my reflection in it. But life kept showing me again and again that everything begins in the mind. When I was anxious, opportunities shrank. When I was centered, doors opened effortlessly. When I believed life was against me, I found endless proof that it was. And when I changed the structure of my thoughts, life changed shape to match it, not instantly, not magically, but naturally, as a reflection. Because the architecture of thought is the foundation of all manifestation. It's the hidden system that governs reality itself. Let's imagine it visually. Every thought you have sends a pattern into the field, like light through a prism. Positive, negative, neutral, it doesn't matter. Each carries form. Each builds structure when enough similar patterns overlap. They condense first as emotion, then as action, and finally as physical experience. By the time you see something in your life, it's already the result of countless mental blueprints layered over time. You don't experience what you want. You experience what you believe, and belief is just thought repeated until it hardens into reality. Most people live unaware of their architecture. They build unconsciously, allowing fear, media, opinion, and memory to draw their blueprints for them. So their inner world becomes a construction site run by chaos. And then they wonder why the walls around them keep collapsing. But once you remember you are the architect, you begin to design differently. You start choosing your materials, attention, emotion, belief. You learn that focus is mortar, that imagination is scaffolding, that trust is foundation. And when you build from that level, life begins to respond in ways that feel almost impossible. Stillness becomes your drafting table. Intention becomes your compass. Awareness becomes your pen. And thought. Thought becomes the blueprint of everything you will ever touch, feel, or know. Because reality isn't separate from you. It's an extension of your inner architecture made visible. Sometimes people ask, if that's true, why do bad things happen? Why do we suffer? And the answer isn't simple, but it's honest. Suffering is part of the architecture too. It's how the structure learns where it's weak, where it needs to evolve, where the blueprint has collapsed under old patterns. Without contrast, there's no clarity. Without collapse, no rebuilding. The pain doesn't mean you failed. It means the structure is ready for redesign. Every architect knows that to build something lasting, you must first break what no longer serves. Old thoughts, old fears, old identities, they crumble so new forms can rise. And once you understand that process, you stop fearing destruction. You start welcoming it as the sound of transformation. That's the hidden mercy in all endings. They clear the foundation for a truer beginning. There's a moment in every life when the outer world stops making sense. When no amount of logic can explain why things unfold the way they do, we call it coincidence, fate, chance. But what if there's no such thing? What if the architecture of your thoughts is weaving invisible threads between every person, place, and event you encounter, connecting them into a pattern only consciousness could design? Think of the universe as a living field. Every thought is a vibration you send into that field, a tone in a symphony of infinite frequencies. When you think, you don't just create an idea, you send a resonance. And that resonance seeks harmony, whatever matches it in emotion, in energy, in form, moves toward you. That's why the most powerful thoughts are not words but feelings. Emotion is the current that carries thought into form. The stronger the feeling, the clearer the architecture it imprints into reality. Years ago, I met a woman who changed the way I understood this. She was an artist, soft-spoken and almost invisible in the chaos of the world. But her life was strange in a beautiful way. Everywhere she went, synchronicities followed, opportunities, meetings, moments of impossible timing. I asked her once, how do these things keep happening to you? She smiled, almost embarrassed, and said, I don't try to make things happen. I just try to stay in tune. At the time, I didn't understand. But later, when I began to study the patterns of thought and emotion, it became clear she was describing the architecture of resonance. When your thoughts and emotions align, you become coherent. Your inner field vibrates as one unified signal, and coherence is magnetic. It calls forth experiences that match your inner state, not because the universe is rewarding you, but because energy seeks reflection. Always. You can't think harmony and live in chaos. You can't dwell on fear and attract peace. The architecture doesn't allow contradiction. What you hold within becomes the scaffolding of what appears without. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine. It's about precision, awareness, intention. When you begin to observe your thoughts, truly observe them, you'll notice they have structure. Some are sharp, rushed, fragmented, and they build fragmented realities. Others are slow, deliberate, filled with gratitude, and they form coherent fields that attract opportunity. The architecture of thought is not built in words. It's built in quality. The quality of your attention defines the quality of your life. Asterisk. So how do you reshape this inner structure? How do you rewrite the blueprint when the old one feels too heavy, too rigid, too broken? The first step is silence. Silence is not absence. It's space. It's the clearing where new architecture can emerge. When the mind quiets, even for a moment, the field resets. The noise stops distorting the signal, and reality begins to respond to the stillness rather than the chaos. Try this. Sit somewhere quiet and let your thoughts drift by like clouds. Don't chase them. Don't judge them. Just watch. Eventually, a deeper rhythm appears beneath the noise, a subtle hum. It feels like awareness itself. That hum is the foundation of your architecture. It's pure consciousness, unshaped by memory or fear. Every conscious creation begins there in stillness, not in struggle. From that place, you begin to design with intention. You choose a thought, clearly, precisely. You feel it as if it's already real. You allow emotion to give it substance. And then you let it go. That release is not surrender. It's trust. It's knowing that once the blueprint is drawn, the field knows what to do. Reality doesn't need to be forced into alignment. It only needs clear instructions, and the clearest instructions come from inner coherence. When what you think, feel, and believe are one. There's something sacred about that alignment. When it happens, life stops feeling random. The architecture reveals its intelligence. You begin to notice timing, patterns, synchronicities that guide you forward like invisible breadcrumbs. You start to feel connected to something vast, not outside you, but through you, and for the first time, you see that your thoughts were never small. They were never private. They were the language of creation itself. But here's the paradox. The more aware you become of your power to shape reality, the more responsibility it brings. Because once you know your mind is the architect, you can no longer blame the design on someone else. Every complaint becomes a command to rebuild. Every fear becomes a request for limitation. Every doubt, another crack in the structure. And that realization can be uncomfortable. It means your life is your own reflection. And nothing changes until the mind that built it does. I remember a moment when this truth hit me hard. I was walking through a city I'd once dreamed of living in, a dream that had somehow become real. But instead of joy, I felt anxious, trapped, empty, and suddenly I saw it. This life, this exact reality, was something I had built out of desire and ambition. But not alignment. It looked perfect from the outside. But the architecture within me had been driven by fear of failure, not love of truth. And the structure reflected that, beautiful but hollow. That night, I realized something profound. It's not enough to know that thoughts create reality. You have to know which part of you is doing the thinking, because the mind has layers, some rooted in truth, others in illusion. When thought rises from fear, it builds walls. When it rises from clarity, it builds doors. And sometimes, to see which is which, you have to step back and look at your own design from above. Ask yourself, what am I building? Protection or expansion? A fortress or a bridge? Every thought carries intention, and every intention writes code into the structure of existence. When your code is written in fear, you build labyrinths that keep you circling the same experiences. When your code is written in trust, you build pathways that lead you toward higher versions of yourself. And over time, you begin to see that the architecture of thought is not fixed, it's living. It grows with you. That's why awareness is everything. Because when you change the way you think, you're not just shifting opinions. You're rewriting the geometry of reality itself. You're changing the angles through which energy flows, the patterns through which events connect, the symmetry through which life reveals meaning. Reality bends to meet you not because it serves you, but because it reflects you. Asterisk, there comes a moment quiet but unmistakable. When you realize you're no longer trapped inside your thoughts, you're watching them, designing them, shaping the flow of your own consciousness like an artist working with light. That's when you understand what it truly means to be awake. Awakening isn't about escaping reality. It's about finally seeing that you were the one constructing it all along. From the first flicker of awareness to the grand symphony of existence, everything is built from the same invisible substance, thought. And every thought follows the same law. It must seek reflection. But reflection is not repetition. It's evolution. Reality doesn't just mirror your thoughts. It refines them. It tests the strength of your structure. It shows you where the foundation is weak, where the design must shift, where you've been building from fear instead of wisdom. In those moments of collapse, when life feels uncertain, when the blueprint seems torn, remember, the architect has not failed. The design is simply evolving. Every structure you've built, every dream that broke, every plan that changed, every identity that fell away, was never meant to last forever. It was meant to teach you how to build better. And so, slowly, quietly, you begin to design with new awareness. Now your thoughts are no longer weapons of fear, but instruments of creation. You begin to choose thoughts that heal rather than harm, ones that expand instead of contract. You start speaking to life, not as a victim, but as a collaborator, and life for the first time begins to listen. It starts arranging itself around your new blueprint, aligning events, people, and opportunities in ways that once seemed impossible. You can almost feel it, the subtle hum of resonance. Between your mind and the field around you, it's as if reality itself has begun to breathe with you. You notice things differently now. The way light bends through a window, the pattern of coincidence that keeps repeating, the feeling before something unfolds, as if the universe whispers a quiet yes, long before the moment arrives. These are not miracles. They are confirmations. They are the living proof of the secret architecture you've always carried inside you. But with that power comes humility, because the more you see how deeply your thoughts shape the world, the more gently you begin to think. You stop reacting to life. You start responding to it. You stop forcing outcomes. You start aligning with flow. You realize that creation is not domination. It's participation. It's the dance between the architect and the structure, the conversation between mind and reality. And in that conversation, silence is as powerful as speech. One evening, you find yourself sitting under the open sky. There's no noise, no distractions, just you and the vast, infinite field that mirrors you back. For a moment, everything feels still. Your thoughts slow down until there's almost none left, only awareness itself. And then you feel it, that unmistakable truth. The universe isn't out there. It's here. In every breath, every heartbeat, every spark of thought rising from the quiet. You and the universe are not two separate entities. You are reflections of the same architecture, consciousness, experiencing itself from different angles. When you finally understand this, something incredible happens. You stop needing to control life. You begin to trust it, because you know that everything, even the chaos, is part of your design. You no longer see randomness. You see rhythm. You no longer see mistakes. You see movement. You no longer see obstacles. You see instruction, and that realization changes everything. From that point on, your thoughts become more deliberate. You start thinking with presence, not out of fear or habit, but out of intention and clarity. You notice that when you think love, the air feels lighter. When you think peace, your surroundings soften. When you think gratitude, the architecture hums in harmony. Reality begins to mirror not your moods, but your mastery. You are no longer building unconsciously. You are designing existence itself, and yet the more consciously you create, the less you feel the need to create anything at all, because you realize the architecture was never incomplete. It was always perfect. Even in its imperfection, all the struggle, all the searching, was part of the process of remembering who you really are. The mind behind the form, the stillness behind the storm. The silent architect of all that is, you begin to see that thought and reality are not two things. They are the same current flowing through different frequencies. When you think the universe listens. When you believe, it responds. When you surrender, it aligns. You are not a guest in this world. You are its co-creator, and every time you close your eyes, every time you breathe with awareness, every time you choose love instead of fear, you rewrite the architecture of existence itself. So take one last moment. Feel that truth settle deep within you. You are not small. You are not powerless. You are not separate. You are the geometry of consciousness made visible. You are the mind the universe uses to dream itself awake. You are the architect of thought, and thought is the bridge between the invisible and the real. The next time you find yourself lost or uncertain, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "What am I building right now?" Because somewhere in the silence between one thought and the next, your reality is already taking shape, quietly, perfectly, according to the design you draw with every breath. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest secret isn't that reality responds to the mind, but that reality is the mind dreaming itself into form. Over and over again until you remember that you were never just living in it. You were creating it all along. Soft, ambient pause. And in that realization, the architect finally wakes up.